Professor Basu, to you first. You know, we're all bright up and early this morning, even if the temperatures are low. I think the excitement is high for this budget because it's a budget that we worked hard for. It's the second budget since the pandemic hit. It's the budget in which we have to make a point. It's the budget to tell the world that, and of course the lobby that you wrote us off.
Yes.
But here we are and back, and how? It's not a question of relative recovery. It's about a booming recovery. And I think, especially after, while we are getting towards hopefully the ebbing of the third wave, there's a message to be sent. What's the message to be sent today?
Well, the message is that there's enormous amount of fiscal space. If you look at the numbers from April to December, the full year revenue target has almost been reached. 95.4% of the revenue receipts expected for the full year are already in by December. So we're going to have a very strong fiscal performance, which basically provides an enormous amount of space for the finance minister to use that fiscal space to do whatever she wishes. She can either lower some tax rates, she can boost spending, particularly capital expenditure, which is a key need of the economy at this point. It creates an enormous amount of fiscal space because the revenue performance has been absolutely spectacular this year. Every kind of tax revenue has gone up sharply. We've seen an increase of revenue from corporate taxes, from income taxes. They are way above the levels of the pre-COVID year. So given that, there is a tremendous amount of scope for improvement on that, and scope for the finance minister to do what she wishes with that fiscal space. Apart from that, of course, the fact that revenues are so strong underlines the fact that the economy itself is doing extremely well, which is why you have such a strong revenue performance. Revenue comes from strong income growth, from corporate profits growth, from very strong GST revenues, which are growing strongly primarily because of a recovery in the consumption space. Now, consumption is the one area that hasn't grown quite as rapidly as the rest of the economy. Investment has started picking up strongly. And all of that is contributing. And of course, last year was India was the world's fastest growing exporter. Export growth last year was nearly 42%. In the calendar year, India's exports did far better than anyone else in the world. China's grew only 29.9%, India's grew 41.6%. So that's goods exports, leave alone services. Services exports are doing very well, but goods are doing spectacular.
You know, Professor Basu, I think a lot of people who want the booster and who are not getting it, thanks to the government's conservative policies, have got obsessed. They keep saying, this is the booster shot. This is the booster shot. Will we get the booster shot in the budget? I tell them just wait for the government to open up a little bit. But everyone, Sohail, is calling it the booster shot, the new normal. I mean, these COVID terms have just penetrated our discussion these days. We just keep talking, Ashish, in terms of booster shots. Now, this particular budget is on the back of a pandemic. It's ahead of a big election. So I want to see how the finance minister will manage the competing demands from various sectors. I want to see what the new normal will be. And I want to see how India will interact in the world where COVID is the norm. Ashish, over to you, Ashish. Expectations this morning.
So the point I want to make, and good morning to everyone. The point I want to make is this is not a booster shot. So this is, I think, a misconception. If you look at what happened during the global financial crisis in 2008, 2009, global central banks got together and gave a booster shot in terms of the economic stimulus. What resulted as a function of that was huge inflation. This time around, again, when we had the pandemic, the global central banks got together. The only difference this time was the Indian government moved away from the conventional path, and the others followed. So consumption was definitely not the focus of this government. This government focused on investment-led growth. And though it is an arduous path and it's a long-term path, they decided to take it rather than giving protecting the weaker sections of the society, the MSMEs. That's something that the government focused on. But consumption-led growth was moved, is something that they moved away from. Investment-led growth is, and that's exactly what PK spoke to us about, a couple of minutes back. That's causing the economic growth.